In this video, we're going to multiply two fractions. So in previous videos, we multiplied a whole number by a fraction and a fraction by a whole number. So now we want to look at some scenarios where we'd need to multiply two fractions and what that may look like. So let's read the example. Yesterday, Cameron walked a third of a mile to school. Today, Cameron's friend picked him up after he had walked half of the way to school. And we want to know how far did Cameron walk today. So notice that we're measuring this in miles. That's our unit, so we're going to label that. And this number line is broken into three equal pieces. So we'll start with the fact that Cameron walked a third of a mile to school yesterday. So this would be the third of a mile. Here's 2/3. And I'm just going to highlight the distance he traveled in orange. So this is how far he traveled yesterday. But now today, his friend picked him up after he had walked half of the way to school. So we want to find half of 1/3. Well, let's just take half and eyeball it and find the middle. Okay, so this is today, how far he walked. So we know this is less than 1/3, but what is this value in terms of miles? Well, since we cut from 0 to 1/3 into two equal pieces to make a half, let's cut the rest of it into halves. And now we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 equal pieces. So this is 1/6, 2/6 is the same as 1/3, 3/6, etc. So today, he traveled to this point, which is 1/6 of a mile. Okay. So what did we find? We found half a copy of 1/3. So 1/3 was our reference that we wanted to find 1/2 of. So 1/2 of a copy of 1/3. Symbolically, we're going to multiply just like we multiplied before. Multiply 1/2 times 1/3. We multiply the numerators, 1 times 1. The denominators are 2 times 3. And we get 1/6 of a mile, just like our diagram indicated. Okay, and notice the 1/3 was cutting the whole into 3 pieces. Then the 2 cut that third into 2 pieces, making a total of 6 pieces to get 1/6 of a mile. Let's look at the next example. Jassy bought a rectangular piece of land to grow vegetables. The land is 2/3 of a mile long and 3/4 of a mile wide. Here comes the question. How many square miles of land did Jassy buy? Okay. So here we have a diagram set up, and notice it's 1 mile by 1 mile. And Jassy's land is smaller than that. It's 2/3 of a mile times 3/4 of a mile. So what we're going to do is we're going to partition this land and find the fractional amount that Jassy bought. So first, let's start with the 2/3. I'm going to cut this into thirds this way. So here's 3 equal pieces, and we'll say that from here to here is the 2/3 long of Jassy's land. And now we have 3/4 this way. So I'm going to cut this length into 4 equal pieces. First I'll cut it in half, then I'll cut the halves in half. And then this would be 1, 2, 3/4 of a mile in this direction. So now let's use a blue pen to highlight his piece of land. So the question is, what fraction of 1 square mile is this piece right here? Okay. Well, notice the entire square mile is broken into, let's just number these. I'm going to number them in kind of a weird way, but it'll make sense later. it's broken into 12 equal pieces, so each square, or actually they're rectangles, each rectangle is 1/12 of a square mile. Okay. Since 1 mile by 1 mile is 1 square mile, since these pieces are equally sized, there's 12 of them, each one is 1/12. Well, Jassie's piece of land is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of those. That's why I numbered it this way. So, it is 6 copies of 1/12 of a square mile, or 6/12. Okay? And we'll write our units and simplify that. Well, that's 1/2 of a square mile. Okay. So now let's use copies of language. So what we did is we found 2/3 of one and then took 3/4 of this 2/3. Okay, so here's 2/3. Okay, then we only took 3/4 in the other direction of the 2/3, which eliminated all of these. So we could also, in this case, we could think of it in the other direction, 3/4 of 2/3. It doesn't make a difference which one is the length and the width in this case. In a lot of application problems, even though the answer is the same, it would change the context, but in this one it's the same. So we'll just use 2/3 of a copy of 3/4. Okay. So that means we are going to multiply 2/3 times 3/4. Multiply the numerators, multiply the denominators. If you want, you can simplify here. I'll just multiply across. So 6 out of 12, which is how we got this, which simplifies to 1/2 of a square mile, which correlates with our result from before. Let's look at one last example. Ray made a tray of brownies. He ate 1/5 of the tray after they had cooled. The next day, he ate 3/4 of what was left over in the tray. And our question is, how much of the whole tray did Ray eat the next day? Okay, so let's draw a picture of this, and this is a great example of why you shouldn't just take the numbers and start multiplying them, because notice it says he ate 1/5 of the tray after they had cooled. So we're going to break this into 5 equal pieces as best we can. 5 can be tricky. Okay, so imagine that they're the same size, and he ate 1/5. So we'll say he ate this, and I am going to shade that blue. Okay. Now, since he ate 1/5, that means that 4/5 remains. Okay. So this is the 4/5 that remain. The next day he ate 3/4 of what was left over, which is this. So now I am going to break this into 4 equal pieces. We can go all the way across like we did before. 2. Okay, that's not the best 4 equal pieces I've ever made, but imagine this is 1/4, that's another quarter, 3/4, 4/4 going down this way. So he ate 3/4. Now I'm going to shade that a different color. How about yellow? So the yellow is what he ate the second day. Okay, this was already gone, so he couldn't eat 3/4 of that. Okay, so now the question was, how much of the whole tray did Ray eat the next day? So what is this yellow part relative to the whole tray? Well, the whole tray has, let's see, this was 3/4 in this direction. Okay, the whole tray has 5, 10, 15, 20 pieces. Notice that's the product of the denominators. So each piece, the way we have it now, is 1/20 of the tray. 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 1/20 of the t And Ray had, we'll number them, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. That's a lot of brownies. He had 12, we'll pretend this was small so we didn't eat too much, 12 copies of 1/20th of the tray, which would give us 12 over 20, which simplifies to 3/5 of the original tray. Okay, so that's what we're getting from the diagram. Now let's use copies of language. So notice we started with 4/5. He had 3/4 of the 4/5. 3/4 of a copy of 4/5. Okay, notice in this case that is different than the reverse, 4/5 of a copy of 3/4, because we started off with the 4/5 and then took 3/4 of the 4/5. Okay, notice that 1/5 is not going to be in our problem. We're finding 3/4 times 4/5, which is 3 times 4 over 4 times 5. Okay, these 4's cancel the 1, since there's 1 in the numerator and 1 in the denominator. And we get 3/5, which corresponds with our original result. So Ray ate 3/5 of a tray the next day.